To represent Oakland today, we have a really amazing person. Bamuthi is the founding partner of Youth Speaks. He's the co-founder of Life is Living. He's also the chief of program and pedagogy at the Yerba Buena Center of the Arts in San Francisco. It's an honor for me and Creative Mornings Oakland to welcome up on stage Marc Bamuthi Joseph.
Morning. Morning. It's kind of early. If you have 2 kids, it's like whatever. It's like the middle of the day. My name is Bamuthi. I'm the Chief of Program and Pedagogy at Yerba Buena Center for the Arts in San Francisco. I sometimes make small poems for my children, and I sometimes make big theater pieces. For the Kennedy Center or the Chautauqua Symphony or Lincoln Center or the Philadelphia Opera. But my primary artistic action right now is my practice of producing large-scale affirmations of Black life in the public realm. I sing of Black joy in this hour of chaos. Black life, famous when dead. Our lives matter then. Sure, all lives matter, man, but look at my skin. Black joy. In the beginning was green, which was the first problem. Green like solar panels, rainforests, and carbon footprints. Green like federal dollars on subsidies to oil companies. Green like the BP logo, like shoots in a decimated economy, never to bear fruit. In the beginning, the idea was simple and slightly hubristic. If we throw an urban performance festival in an under-resourced park and we infuse that festival with an environmental message, then we can create a pathway to green vocabulary, consciousness, and action in Black and brown neighborhoods. Simultaneously, by activating the park with art, we could model to the artistic presenting field that perhaps the best way to address issues of audience development was to actually develop work in the underused spaces of poor and new majority America. The problem was that we were attempting to impose values and vocabulary of physical ecology in a community that was preoccupied with social ecology, who already was in possession of vocabulary, values that reflected a conservationist ethic born out of necessity, sustainable survival practices born out of generations and blood memory. If you look real close, you can see he has 21, maybe 27 and a half hairs on his chin. At first you miss the hair because the first thing you notice is his skin. If it were soil, his is the earth brown you'd want to sow in. A Chicago sun, hard times. He does not blink. So think of this brother brown, and now see this mother black. You see how dark the day becomes when you bury the sun, how you set the future back. A mother inters a murdered teen. If you're brown, you can't go green until you hold a respect for Black life. In the beginning, we threw successful events, but we didn't succeed in creating and promoting a new paradigm by which Black and brown communities could activate a consciousness that was sensitive to both global environment and the urgency of system-induced pathologies, the ever-present shadow of both the educational and nutritional industrial complexes. The idea and the desire were there, though. And the Doris Duke Charitable Fund gave us the resources to pursue a model to attack this critical point of inquiry. We responded with two decisive actions. The first was a branding strategy, and the second was an organizing model. And then we spent 2 years implementing them in more than 7 cities across the United States. The first thing we did was we changed the name of our event from Red, Black, and Green to Life is Living. The logic was that the word green, as previously suggested, comes with its own set of assumptions, immediate cultural history, pop cultural association with affluence. So rather than maintain green as a primary value in an attempt to indicate where the community should go, we inserted life as the primary value, as an indicator of some place that we already were. The second impactful change was the evolution of our organizing model from a single organization, single curator strategy to a multiplayer interdisciplinary network. We took the capitalist practice of constructing critical adjacencies to add value to space to create a co-op of ideas and execution that we call the creative ecosystem. The retail model looks like this. Developer A builds a Safeway on the corner of 51st and Broadway in Oakland, right? The Safeway becomes an even more attractive destination when you put a Payless shoe store next to it. And then you add a Bank of America and a Starbucks and blah, blah, blah. So in this way, an artificial community is created based on diverse consumption and proximity. So among these entities, the shared value is the amassment of profit. Though they have different methods of building wealth. Life is Living applies similar logic, but instead of real estate, community is constructed on an art and pedagogy-based cornerstone. And instead of financial profit at the center, these partnerships or adjacencies led by a collective powered by Youth Speaks places one critical issue at center, and that issue is life. We ask hundreds of leaders in several different cities, but specifically here, as you can see in Oakland, what sustains life in your community? The answers are sometimes rooted in environmental sustainability, but they often veer towards the colloquial and the absurd. Frenchie's Chicken Shack sustains life in Houston like Beyonce does. City Slicker Farm sustains life in Oakland just like Urban Relief does. B-Boys sustain life in New York City like the sustainable South Bronx does. The composite responses become the foundation for Life is Living, and like the retail model, it involves a shared value and plurality of methodologies, but this is a model built on relationships. My partners at Youth Speaks had to concede that we were excellent at drawing crowds, maybe producing art, but it was disingenuous to claim to be an eco-agency when that so clearly wasn't our area of expertise. So instead, we fell back on our 2 pillars of our mission statement. 1, we create safe space, and 2, we perform interdisciplinary collaboration. So we shifted from placing the event at the center to placing the varied relationships at the center of our work. Very simply, in addition to local and touring repertory work, visual arts projects, my theater company's most successful modality is its function as a hub of a localized interdisciplinary network, a network that meets monthly, shares ideas, builds community, produces shared space in which to make collective ideas manifest. So here's the thing about this particular social incubator. Its function is to model what Black joy might look like at scale. Besides hip hop itself, Black Lives Matter is probably the longest sustained grassroots movement of note in my lifetime. Ironically, what sustains the movement most is not necessarily the leaders themselves as much as the fact that cops or vigilantes keep killing unarmed Black people. So even if folks wanted to mute the campaign, they couldn't because Walter Scott is getting shot in the back, or Sam Ambrose is getting shot in his face. 9 people are being annihilated in the house they came to pray in. The movement is a place of mourning. And it is sometimes full of rage and has also been the site of paramilitary opposition. So you can understand the edge in this time of drought. You can sense the extra parched thirst for wet justice to come rolling down. So what is the visual score for this stress? Consider the theater of a grainy camera phone pointed at Oscar Grant, or grainy audio picking up the distant sound of Trayvon Martin's final moments. And the alternative iconography comes from where? Rap. ask yourself, what is your normalized view of Black people as a mass? Not a few people in your workplace. I'd submit that in the American imagination, Black people don't tend to aggregate in places of success. See us imagined by America in mass, and the landscape might be poverty or jail, and at best church. So artistically speaking, the most worthy thing I might do right now is place Black joy among the white noise and make something beautiful and participatory so that we might consider Black life in public space in a frame other than rage or grief. These are images from my project for Creative Time, which is our country's foremost curator of public art. I'm aware that the team there, including the new director of the Brooklyn Museum, Ann Pasternak, knew about my strategies for facilitating life as living and urban creative ecosystems, and so they invited me to make a work of scale in New York. This spring, about 100,000 people encountered this exhibition in Central Park. Joining 12 collaborators, including the incredible Brett Cook, who designed and executed the visual centerpiece of our work, I made a refracted, self-repairing second line called Black Joy in the Hour of Chaos. As inspiration, the score considers reframing the matter of Black life through the lenses of joy, passing, and migration. It asks, can we expose the border politics of Black music in a northward bound morning? What did our grandmothers leave behind that'd be pretty handy right about now? Says, we're going to describe a particular ecstasy to you. Kids like Trayvon or Jordan or Mike or Oscar would have trouble finding the words we're using, but no difficulty finding the feeling. As part of the process, we held Black Joy salons with several Harlem-based institutions, including the nurses of Harlem Hospital, the programming body and constituents of El Museo, the shopkeepers of La Casa Azul, the curatorial team of Harlem Stage. It may seem obvious to you, but here's why Black Joy is worth it. Glory to the kid on the other side of the scope. The cop ain't shooting at you, he's aiming at a trope. He's got a blind spot in his privileges shaped exactly like him. He's been training by naming large mountains after small men. Paying no attention when the leaves change, when the leaves fall, when it freezes over, when the season frees us all. Somber is the sober of full-lipped smile in spring awakening. Joy is a human right. Spring is for the taking in, and it is likely the Black psyche is a ventriloquist for white aggression. A territory for transgression in these last flush days of Camelot. These murdered boys are cultural events, scripts for the performance of outrage. Hooded plucked, left to rot for hours in blood on the asphalt fields where they're shot. So I sing of salt and moan, of brown and blue, of wanting one more day to get it right, of joy in the living Black body and how that matters, the matter of the beating heart, the factor sacrosanct in the scars the soul carves in heaven's palms as it walks earth in heaven's shell, skin the color of the other side of the stars, dark like the dawn that swallowed Sean Bell. In acceptance of our most excessive expectation, in expectation that our highest selves will prevail. I seek to make joy material, to let the ceremony begin, to let the sacks unmask the task of healing, open fists to lift the unquenched thirst for grieving. In the wind, a word winds itself into the drawl of a blind whim, open, vibrant, half of prayer, an arctic blast of free at last, cast in the case of living joy while Black. action. Or more precisely, in honor of this particular morning, creative action. To act in a way that produces something other than volume or the same. To act in a way that contributes to the edge of reasoning. Creative action works to prod forward the edge of what's possible and maybe what's normal. The creative act centers the horizon, says, oh, okay, Hendrix, oh, Winehouse, oh, Kendrick, I can sound like that. Says, oh, TDK Crew, oh, the Sistine Chapel, that's beautiful. Ah, Tony, oh, Juno, okay, Shanaka, okay, Ryan. That's how you use the language. Says, yeah, life is living in Oakland's Little Bobby Hutton Park. That's how you peacefully and respectfully make Black family and community. Oh yeah, Black life matters, but Black joy is not some horizon thing, it's at the center. People think art is recreational, and it may be. You know, it may be a hobby, but artistic action, creative action is only marginalized because it actually does take place on the margin, as in beyond the woods of the status quo. I meet people who think the phrase creative action is such a cop-out. Like, put creative in front of anything, it gives you license to be, you know, like, whatever. You know? Like, maybe creative action is just slightly better than artistic action, which must be maybe the greatest oxymoron of our time. Action, they say, is behavior. Behavior isn't driven by art, it's driven by ambition. We act in aspiration of love. Behavior is driven by the intention to grasp something, like wealth, or protect something, like family. Art is not in and of itself an ambition like these. Art might frame behavior like a soundtrack for life, but it doesn't drive behavior. And some of that is true. But what's also true is that the best art anticipates and predicts behavior. The best art is code for what will eventually be normal. It is the edge of reasoning unencumbered by replicability metrics or scale. As ideas, the best art ultimately gets replicated as common consciousness, and in some cases gets scaled as law. All day, we do stuff, but what moves us? What makes us feel? 9.5 times out of 10, it's God or our kids, or some song, or some film, or some dance, or some color placed just a certain way. So action is behavior, action is also movement. I hope what I've described to you today reads as an action-oriented practice. An action-oriented art practice that is impelled from a place of dream and edge. I work at YBCA, which is an arts institution whose mission is to generate culture that moves people. I advocate for a life here in Oakland that is safe for artists to act, because our city is better when the dreamers thrive among us. I want a better world. And so I endeavor to invest in 3 sustained acts. The first is to behave in a way that indicates that people are part of our ecology, not separate from it. In fact, consider that until we are in right relationship with our broad social ecologies, our physical ecologies will never be in sustainable alignment. Second, I imagine what joy looks like in someone other than myself. And I name that joy. And I seek, at least once a day, to recognize it in the other. And third, and this is true wherever you live, center viable artistic expression in your city. Be aware of the arts institutions around you. Be present to the future as it unfolds in the acts of the artists in our midst. I hope all of that makes sense. I totally thank you for your time.